Hi everyone, my name is Tiffany. Welcome back, or welcome if you've never been here before. It's been a minute. Today I want to talk about all of the books I wish I would have seen nominated for the Goodreads Choice Awards. Now, if you've been following along, the 20 books are out for the romance genre, and I have to say I really had a good time watching Jess's reaction to that because I could relate, okay? Out of the 20 books, I've only read 2, and there are only a couple that I plan to read from that list. Now, I'm not at all surprised at the lack of diversity, the repeat in authors, as well as the fact that there wasn't one historical romance nominated, but I would have loved to be surprised, okay? Now, out of the 20 books, the 2 that I have read that were nominated are Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. This is a cover-to-cover book club pick that's run by Tori and Sam. I did end up rating this 4 stars. However, I felt as though this was more leaning towards women's fiction than it was romance, and that's what I rated it for. I thought it was a compelling story. This is following a heroine who, in an instant, lost so much because of a grave mistake and the reconstruction of that and her putting the pieces back together in her life. I rated this a 4 for that compelling story, not so much the romance, okay? And in parallel, the only other book that I read that's on that list is Electric Idol by Katie Robert. This is the second in her Dark Olympus series, and I did enjoy this more than the first. I rated this 4 stars. But it was for the romance, not so much the plot, if I'm being honest. So I have to say on there, I mean, let's just pull it up here. Hopefully I have a recorded screenshot going for you, because I looked at this list ad nauseum, and there are a couple of romances that I'm looking forward to. I know Book Lovers is one that Steph from Novelty Corner really loved, so I'm looking forward to that. You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty. I bought that during the Audible sale, and so those are really the only other 2 that I plan on reaching for, which got me thinking, when it comes to the books that I wish I would have seen on this list, they're primarily indie published. So I want to take this opportunity to talk about the Indie Romance Awards and share my nominees for that. It's new this year. I'm very excited about it. And that's more in alignment with what I'm actually picking up. They are taking nominations right now. The winners are going to be announced on December 27th. And I'm really excited about all of the categories. This year you can actually nominate backlist as well, because it's the first year that they're being held. So I'm excited. Before I get into those, I do kind of want to share 3 that I don't want to say I'm surprised of the lack of diversity, the fact that there wasn't one historical nominated, but it would have been nice to be surprised. You know what I'm saying? So I want to mention 3 books that will not be part of what we're going to go over today because they weren't indie published. But I just think it's fitting that I start with Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. Where was this? Where was this? Because this made the cutoff. Okay, this is, oh gosh, it's one of my best reading experiences of the year. This is a beautifully written second chance romance between a divorced couple that are co-parenting, the way in which she captures trauma and the glee of a moment, and just how their family got pummeled with it and came back together. I could personally relate to a lot that was going on in this book. The representation was just sound and singing. She popped off, okay? She mic dropped with this book, and I don't understand why it wasn't included. Okay. Also, I would have liked to see, I don't know, a Lady for a Duke on there. I mean, how many trans heroines are we seeing in historicals? None. And I just love the sacrifice that she had to make in order to live as herself in this book, and how the hero is quite literally an embodiment of one of those sacrifices. And the representation in this book, from her story to his chronic pain, and the overall heavy conversations that are broken up with just the comedic levity of Alexis Hall. Oh, he does that so freaking well. And the longing that lingered in just simple moments within this. This is so beautiful. And I'm surprised, okay? I'm surprised it didn't make the list. I'm also surprised that A Caribbean Heiress in Paris by Adriana Herrera wasn't on there. I mean, talk about representation. We had a heroine who is a Black Latin woman in Paris at the helm of her own business, and a hero that was smitten by her fire and her ire. I don't understand. I don't understand why that wasn't included. I don't really get the rhyme or reason of how they're choosing books, but like I said, I want to take this opportunity to uplift the Indie Romance Awards because I will definitely be voting, and I want to go over some of my nominations. I won't be picking books for each category, one of which is thriller. I don't think I've read enough thrillers this year to actually submit for that, but I want to make you aware of it. And let's just get into it. I'm going to be referring to my phone for these categories, probably give you some screenshots. I'm setting up this screen recording for you, okay? I've been accessing the website through their Instagram. This is cute, okay? And I don't think I'm going to go in any particular order. I have books laid about because I'm ready. I will, however, start with what they have up top, and that is contemporary romance, a recent read, if you will. And since you haven't gotten a wrap up, this is my time to discuss it. So for contemporary, I will definitely be nominating Heartless by Elsie Silver. I just absolutely loved this, okay? I loved it. Cade is a grumpy single dad that is a man of honor and duty when it comes to his family, and he's prickly and guarded for good reason. He's not willing to open himself up. He doesn't want just anyone watching his son, but he is in need of a nanny. And that's when Willa comes into the chat. She is the best friend of Summer, who is from Flawless, the first book. And it was just the freaking banter and the chemistry, the way in which she cared for Cade and his son that got me in this book, as well as the third act conflict that was mature and counter to all others that I really have read. There have been very few third act conflicts that have moved me and really shaken me up. I was discussing this with Jen. Like, Jen really called that out, and I was like, in that third act, and just the maturity of this, it's sexy, it's swoony. He's reluctant to fall, and she's fearful of giving in. And I love how she's counter to what he assumes she would want and be for her age. This was delectable, okay? This is definitely being nominated for contemporary in my book. Now, because I'm looking at it right now, slow burn is also a category, and I have to go with another recent read, Funny Feelings by Tara DeWitt. Okay, this was a delightful single dad age gap that gave me When Harry Met Sally vibes in the comedic shorthand between them, the way in which they did life, okay? Mayer is Farley's grumpy manager. She is a female comic on the rise, so much so that she gets offered to open for a female comedy tour, and that also sort of leads to them fake dating for public image and forces them to confront their seemingly unrequited pining. And it's just perfection. This book was smart. The wit is cunning, and she set up the swoony moments in this book like the punchline of a joke. I mean, this was packing depth and weight. I loved Mayer as a devoted single father of a beautiful daughter who's deaf, and I love how he just doesn't have the handbook for that, how they're both just trying to hang on and make sense of life together. This was so relatable. The hilarity and also the heartwarming moments just packed a freaking punch. I absolutely love Tara DeWitt. I am making my way through her backlist. I did just recently finished Co-op, and then there's Rootbound, new to me author, but this is definitely my slow burn nomination for the Indie Romance Awards, okay? It was everything. You need to get into it. And like I said, it's just so smart. Her prose are just so freaking smart. I won't do quotes. We're just gonna go through these. I'm sorry, I almost did. Next, since I'm staring at that one as well, for sapphic and dark romance, 2 separate categories, but I will be submitting this for both. I have to go with The Madhouse by Lisa James. This is also a step-sibling romance. And like I said, this is dark. I'm talking trigger warnings long and strong. Off the top of my head, there are trigger warnings for sexual assault, self-harm, as well as, I'll say, attempted animal harm. Within the first 10% of this book, there's murder, there's blood, there's gore. There is a lot of it that's all centered around the trauma that they endured as children. It's about 2 step-siblings that are reunited after one had to abandon the other to get out. At the beginning of this book, Cedar is reunited with Ophelia, I will call her, since she's being released from the mental hospital after murdering their parents. And this has a religious, horrific edge to it, and the way in which Lisa James authorizes their romance to the point where the taboo element just gets kind of done away with. It's just absolutely compelling. It was riveting. It was clever. This has a freaking death drop of a cliffhanger. I'll say that, but it was a 5-star read. And you know what? I think I'm going to submit this for taboo as well. This is hitting a lot of the categories that they have within this awards. And another fun category was why choose. So I know for a fact I'm picking Losers by Harley LaRoe for that. This had a poly element that I am hoping becomes a trend when it comes to why choose, because I personally find it all the more satiating to read about. That sort of web of emotional connection shared by everyone as opposed to the arrow pointed at the heroine. I think that she delivered very well on that. In this one, Jessica is the former queen bee, you know, too good to sully her image with the freaks that she's drawn to, ever being the bystander to their bullying. And that behavior has persisted long after high school, where this book starts off. And it leads to a sort of sexy bargain and deal under the guise of revenge between Jessica and the 4 outcasts. And I loved it because the heroes already have established relationships within this, and bringing Jessica into the fold feeds and triggers them in different ways. She spent time developing all 5 characters and their connections, and it substantiates this being part 1. It felt like it needed to be part 1, and I cannot wait for the second. Absolutely, this is a 5-star read for me. Absolutely the nomination. And I want something like this to win, because I would like to see more why choose that have a poly element like this. Loved it. Now I'm actually going to look at my phone and stop trying to be cool so I can get the next category. And we're just going to stop right there at Monster Romance, because I'm going to be recommending Tentacles and Triathlons by Ashley Bennett. This had an uppercut, a swoon for me personally. It's set in a really fun world where humans are aware of monsters. They're being integrated into society. There have been pairings. There have been matchings. There's been love. And Cyrus just completely made me freaking melt. He is an artist and a kraken in a cinnamon roll. He's insecure, he's lonely, but he's so loving. And Reese is the brother of the heroine from the first book. He's still getting used to monsters being integrated into society, and that really stems from trauma sparked by his father. And they are sort of placed into proximity when Cyrus offers to help Reese with the swimming portion of the triathlon that he wants to compete in. And this was just really soft, sweet, and swoony. I loved the way that Reese reluctantly just unravels and softens and falls and sees Cyrus, the insecurities that Cyrus has, the way in which that he holds Reese up. It's just was so healing for both of them. It's just a really beautiful artistic moment that I loved within this book, and it's just like I can just like feel it washing over me now. I don't know, I just loved the chemistry between them. I loved how illuminating it was for Reese, and it was just beautiful to have Cyrus, this monster that's lived for eons, be healed by the way that Reese accepts him. It was just beautiful to me. I loved it. Okay, I loved it. It just was cuddly. So that's definitely my pick for that. I will say for YA, I'm definitely going with Sweet Like Poison by Julia Wolf. And I don't read a lot of YA, and this just surprised me. It was so mature. I mean, this is an opposites attract romance between Elaine, who is an ice queen, okay, former mean girl, and Lachlan, who's this big burly rancher. And they end up living next door to each other and having this sort of secret and reluctant, no strings attached situation that leads to a very healing and caring romance for Elena, who is struggling with a lot of trauma. And the acts of care in this book carried out by Lachlan just got me. Okay, the third act, wooing delivered, and the way in which they are just compatible in this, it moved me. This really packed a punch. It definitely has a different tone of all of the others that I've read within the original series, which is how I got some Carter Mahoney vibes from Start a Fire. That's where it starts in high school. This is the spin-off series, and it just feels separate. Anyway, I'm gonna move on. I can talk forever. Next category. I mean, for paranormal, I'm going with Resting Witch Face by Juliet Cross. It absolutely delivered. It's the 5th in the series. I have been waiting for Jules and Ruben's story since Wolf Gone Wild, which is book 1. If you have not read the Stay a Spell series, I highly suggest you pick it up, okay? This was a second chance road trip romance that just, I believe, delivered on and was really clever in the emotional development, as well as where she had them regionally, as well as the reveals on what actually happened between them in the past. Why the tension, why the strife, where they both needed to grow, and just the primal need, the longing. I also enjoyed the sort of mystery element, how they're teaming up to make systemic change. It was just so freaking good. Okay, I can keep going on, and I will in a wrap up, but it was just everything. I just thought it was beautiful. It was heartwarming. It was, she delivered, and I will be nominating it. Next. My bad, y'all. I'm just like having way too much fun over here. For Mafia, I'm going with Brutal Vows by JT, because I was thinking, I have loved my Neva Altage. I'll probably throw Broken Whispers in there as well, but I have to bring it back to Brutal Vows by JT Geisinger. I'm definitely going to be nominating that for Mafia, okay? Because Reina, the Black Widow, just absolutely took me out. It's the verbal volley, the turns of the freaking tongue, the dagger that is her tongue lashings that got me in this book. She just leapt off the page. She is in a situation where she has some influence to turn the tides of her niece being made to marry Spider, who's the right-hand man of the Irish Mafia. And Spider's kind of sworn off love hasn't really worked out for him within the series, and it is their romance. And I absolutely loved it between them. Like I said, the verbal volley was on par. And Reina as a heroine to me was just larger than life. And I loved how they blended. I also loved her representation in terms of a survivor and her strength and fortitude in that. There is a beautiful moment in that book that was so affirming for me. And it just goes to show that trauma doesn't look the same on everyone. But anyway, Brutal Vows by JT Geisinger, definitely going to be nominated. Also, fantasy is a category. And I would love to see That Time I Yeeted a Love Potion at a Demon. I hope that's the title. I'm just going off the top of my head by Kimberly Lemming. I would love to see this win, because Kimberly Lemming's series is just so fun. It is not taking itself too seriously, but it also has really heavy themes. In the second book, this is a fated mate, and it's questionable. There is a really clever way that consent is brought into the chat within this one. I mean, all of the heroines within this series, including Mistletoe, okay, which is the Christmas novella, are reluctant to fall, and they're strong, and they get caught up in a freaking quest with the hero, and they're confronted with their vulnerabilities and have these just alpha heroes that worship them. In the second book, carries on one of my favorite fantasy characters from this year, a side character. Her name is Alexis. She is a sword. She's crude, she's crass, and if she was corporeal, she'd be stealing all of their men. And I just love how fun this is. And like I said, the levity that is brought to heavier themes of enslavement, consent, I just think that these are so fun. The hero in the second book reads her romance novels for tips. She's a paranormal romance reader. It's just kind of everything. And I would love to see Kimberly Lemon like highlighted and maybe win something. I mean, oh my gosh. I will also say that rom-com is a category, and I will probably end up recommending Parks and Provocation by Juliet Cross, as well as Bright Like Wildfire. They both feature the hilarity in heroines that are reluctant to love, heroes that fall first, and these just comedic moments of reuniting, and they're clever, forced proximity, and I just love the way that Juliet Cross does comedy, because if the comedy doesn't land, I'm cringing, and I just picked up everything she was giving us this year. I mean, she gave it to us all year long. Thank you, Juliet. I'm sorry, but like, I was living all year with everything that she gave us. It's been a Juliet Cross year. I just want to like give her things and encourage you to put in for your nominations for the Indie Romance Awards. I really want to celebrate and support an awards that's uplifting the books that I love so much. So I hope this wasn't too chaotic. Either way, it was a lot of fun to film. It's been a minute that I've seen you. So I want to thank you for joining me. Please consider subscribing and sticking around, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.